Hey, everybody, welcome into your week 15 waiver wire live stream. It is the usual candidates here. Me, Dan Harris, him, Kyle Yates. What's up, Yates? Yates, hold on. Before we get into it, we talked on, or actually, we were talking just on Slack, but on the waiver wire live stream, we were not excited about it when we talked to Sig Bloom and Tags and I were like, oh, another gross waiver wire week. I am suddenly kind of excited about this waiver wire week. Am I wrong? I mean, we've got with the Raheem Mostert injury, with the James Conner injury, we've got people who might lead you to championships. What do you think?
I definitely think that it got more interesting since you recorded the podcast.
No, we need more enthusiasm. More enthusiasm.
You're not going to get that. You're not going to get that from me week 15 on a waiver wire live stream. I'm sorry. Talking about the waiver wire week 15. No, I'm not going to be that excited as you. Sorry.
We have 10,000 people sitting here waiting for us to lead them. I don't know how many people. There are a lot of people actually. If you're watching, hi, thank you for tuning in. Week 15. Congratulations to at least either being in the playoffs or having something to root for or being Kyle's relative. It's really great to see you here. We have actually a pretty decent group of candidates here. I'm not kidding with you. I think this is a big week. And look, you might be sitting there and saying it's week 15, man. I'm in the semis. What do I need this group of whatever players? I legitimately made the semis last week, starting Devontae Parker and Chase Claypool. And the guy who I was going to start this week was Raheem Mostert. And it does not sound good on that front. So I'm going to be going to the waiver wire tonight or tomorrow, depending on which league I am in. And so we've got a lot of things to do. So Yates, are you ready to dive into it and get some people to the championship?
Let's go.
All right. Number one overall, who do you got?
Number one overall, I have Gus Edwards.
Really?
Because of the matchup here against Jacksonville. Now, again, I like the Raheem Mostert injury. Yeah, that can move Jeff Wilson up. You're going up against Dallas. Like you start your opposing running backs against Dallas. And so, and Benny Snell is in consideration too, obviously. But yet at the same time with Gus Edwards, 2 touchdowns yesterday. Yes, he took a back seat to J.K. Dobbins. But with Mark Ingram, we talked about this on the podcast that you weren't on that we recorded earlier today, Dan, saying that I saw Mark Ingram out there for the first play of the game, which was that flea flicker.
Yeah.
And then I never saw him again.
Mm-hmm.
So finally, it seems like this is now a 2-headed monster in this Baltimore backfield versus a 3-headed monster, which was just kind of gross to try and parse through and find the fantasy value. Whereas with some of these offenses that are heavy or run heavy, like Cleveland, right? We talk about Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb continuously having value. That can happen here with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. So especially if Gus Edwards is going to be the guy that they use in the red zone, and then especially with the matchup here against Jacksonville, 13.5-point favorites last time I checked.
Yeah.
It may have even gone up. So yeah, I think that you're going to be seeing a lot of Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins this week.
So I really like Gus Edwards as a pickup. He's my 5th pickup on the week, which this is what I mean is that I think there are guys who can help you this week for sure. My worry with Edwards is I agree. It was sort of a 2-headed monster. First of all, we're going to assume that Ingram's done, right?
Yeah.
Considering that we assume this is not going to be a Kyle Shanahan thing. Is it like next week? It's going to be like Mark Ingram gets all the touches. Betty still gets, J.K. Dobbins gets 1. This is done, right? With Ingram, we can assume. Okay.
Yep.
Even so, though, Dobbins, what was it, twice the snaps sort of that Gus Edwards got. So that's the only thing holding me back. It is a great matchup. At once upon a time, Jacksonville wasn't half bad against running backs. Now they're pretty terrible. But my only thing with Edwards that puts him down a little bit on the running back rankings for me is the fact that Dobbins got so many more snaps than him. But I think what you're saying is they know now where their bread is buttered. We saw it yesterday. This is clearly they kind of got back to what made them so great. Let Lamar Jackson run, read option, let the guys get out in space. Don't really go in the passing game. There's room for both Dobbins and Edwards. So you're good to farm up. Where do you think you're going to rank them this week?
Yeah. So, I mean, with Dobbins and Edwards specifically, Dobbins will probably be a top 10 option for me. And then Edwards will probably be just outside the top 24, if not squeezing into the top 24 when it's all said and done. So I think that you can absolutely roll out both these guys.
All right. So my number one, and again, I will put it like this. At this point in the season, your number one is dependent on what position you need, right? If you need a running back, you got to go with a running back. If you need a wide receiver, go wide receiver. You need a quarterback, go quarterback. Jalen Hurts right now sits atop my waiver wire rankings, and that's really because I think, and I haven't done my rankings yet, you either, right? Yates, you haven't done your week 15 rankings yet. So we're kind of spitballing it at this point. But I think Jalen Hurts, especially against Arizona, I mean, you saw what he did against New Orleans, very tough against quarterbacks. Arizona, not that tough against quarterbacks and give up rushing yards to quarterbacks. Hurts could be a guy who could explode, and I think is going to be a borderline top 12 option this week. So for me, if you have a quarterback who you are starting, Jalen Hurts, like most of the leagues that I'm in, I have a set it and forget it quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, stuff like that. But if you've been streaming, there's probably no Matthew Stafford this week. Or if your opponents might be streaming, because that's another thing you need to be thinking about at this point. You need to block your opponents from improving their team. So if they're a little iffy at quarterback, Hurts is the guy. Is Hurts at least your number one quarterback pickup of the week, Yates?
He's not.
Yates.
So with Jalen Hurts, I mean, New Orleans, first off, had no business losing that game. Like, for as talented of a team as New Orleans is, for as bad as Philadelphia has been this year, New Orleans had no business losing that game. What I was seeing when I was watching back through that game was the New Orleans edge defenders continuously chipping inside, continuously pressuring inside. And what that allowed Jalen Hurts to do was just simply roll out and then extend and pick up plays. Now, he looked great as far as his mobility, everything. That's what I've said. Like, he has the ability to rack up this rushing yardage, but yet what I'm really interested to see here with Vance Joseph and this Arizona Cardinals defense is, do they just set contain on the edges? Did they just say, like, we're going to keep you in the pocket and we're going to force you to beat us with your arm? And I just don't know if that's going to happen here against Arizona. So to say that he's going to be a borderline top 12 option, I'm not there. I will probably have Jalen Hurts as a low end streaming option. Okay. I am not going to be as bullish on Jalen Hurts as you are. So because I'm really interested now that Vance Joseph and the defensive coordinator for the Arizona Cardinals can sit down and say, okay, this is what we saw Jalen Hurts do. Dennis Allen didn't make in-game adjustments here. Let's game plan for Jalen Hurts now that we have some tape to work off of and see what he looks like in this offense. We saw a tendency here to bail out of the pocket, and let's eliminate that and see if he can beat us with his arm.
I think that makes sense. I'm just not sure that Arizona has the horses necessarily to be able to contain Hurts with the speed. Again, whatever, 18 rushes and I believe 106 yards. Now I get it. Your point upon like how the Saints defended it you're absolutely right. But again, these were designed. I mean, this is a playbook that was essentially designed around Hurts. And I think finally designing your game plan around your quarterback, as opposed to telling Carson Wentz, here's what you do. Sit back there for like 8 seconds, find the open guy way downfield. Terrible. This was an adjustment that I think is sustainable. So for me, is number one. So out of curiosity, who is your number one quarterback, understanding that he's not your top waiver wire pick or anything?
Yeah, I've talked about him for weeks. It's Mitchell Trubisky. I'm going back to this and looking at what Trubisky did this past week. It's not just the stats. 3 touchdowns, that's great. I've been recommending him as a streamer for the past several weeks now, but it's looking at the matchup here against Minnesota. You're looking at the secondary that Minnesota has, the defense, the lack of ability to create pressure, but it's also what the offense is looking like as a whole. They are continuously getting Mitch Trubisky on the move. They're rolling him out. They're, creating play action boots. They're utilizing play action a ton, and just he's taking what the defense is giving to him. And if it's not a top 5 defense, which Minnesota is by no means, then this is a defense, a game that he should be able to rack up. Again, the offense is putting up points, and he should be able to rack up yardage, and he also does have the ability to create with his legs. So Trubisky is going to be the same range that he was for me last week in my rankings, at like 13, 14, 15, in that range. But yet that's, again, above Jalen Hurts. And I'm taking it 1 week at a time at this point, right?
Yeah.
You got it with the playoffs. So, yeah, I think Trubisky is the one who's going to rank higher in my week 15 rankings. And so that's why he's higher in my waiver wire rankings.
All right. We have officially covered the quarterbacks that we're going to need to cover here for waiver wire, right? Because chances are you haven't been figuring out a way to just barely get by here with your quarterbacks. You're probably there, but you might need running backs. You might need wide receivers. So you said Gus Edwards is number 1. Who's number 2?
Yeah, right in that same range as Benny Snell. James Conner apparently popped up with a quad injury today to go along with the litany of other injuries that he's got. So, man, I just with James Conner, and even here's the thing, like, I'm not super excited about Benny Snell based on what we saw the last time that he received the majority of the touches. Well, he actually didn't even. Yeah, he did, but he finished with less yardage than Anthony McFarland. So, man, it's like I can't I can't really trust Benny Snell to the point where I'm going to rank him as a top 24 running back this week. But yet you look at the matchup up against Cincinnati and you say, okay, maybe can get there, right?
Yeah.
He's going to need to score to finish in the top 24, in my
Yes.
opinion. But yet I think there's an excellent chance of that happening. So yeah, in the same territory of Gus Edwards, it all depends on what you're most comfortable with. But yet, and it's also too, James Conner, like as of right now, it seems pretty bleak that he's going to be suiting up here. But yet at the same time, it's like, I don't have that official word with Gus Edwards. I know what his role is. I know that he's going to be involved, and I know that he has a great matchup. So I'm letting that be the little tiebreaker there.
Yeah, that's fair. I think I'm going into it assuming that Connor's not going to play. He did not look good. He hasn't looked good in a while. And Snell, he's generally speaking, it's not like he's been dominating when he's been in there, but he's run better. He looks better overall, I think, than James Conner did. And you talked about the last game. Yeah, I mean, against Washington, when it was like, okay, you've still got the deal. 8 carries for 5 yards, 2 catches for 5 yards. It was terrible. But the weekend before against Baltimore, and they weren't fully healthy against the run, but 16 for 60 plus 3 catches for 33 yards. Now you've got Cincinnati. You've got this passing game not working whatsoever. This kind of strikes me as a game where the Steelers will say, okay, Ben can't do this thing where we're going to throw it 45 times every single game. It's not working for us. Let's take a little breather. Let's give it to Benny Snell a lot. So he is a guy who, assuming he does start this week, I'm kind of optimistic on. So I do like him as a pickup. You're right, though. We don't know for sure that James Conner is out, but I am going to assume that there really is no need to push him at this point. They should win this game. I don't know how many point favorites they are off the top of my head, but they should win this game.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, you can look it up. I mean, it's got to be double digits, I assume, probably 12 or 13. So you assume that they're going to win the game pretty handily. And with that, I think they can go to the backup with Benny Snell. So he's up there for me too, and he's one spot ahead of Gus Edwards, but it's
12 and a half.
Yep.
12 and a half point favorites.
It's about right. So, Yates, you haven't gotten to my number one running back on the week. And again, this is probably, I feel like, in the same vein as Snell, which is we don't know for sure that the guy in front of him is out. That's Jeff Wilson. I mean, for me, you've got Raheem Mostert, who I think has already underwent an MRI on his ankle, which he injured in this last game. I think he was out and then he came back in on it. I thought it was being
evaluated for a concussion is why he was out. So that's why the ankle injury was a little surprising to me.
Well, I think he did leave with a concussion, but then I think that he banged up his ankle towards the end of the game. I think he did leave and was evaluated for concussion. I could be misremembering that at this point. It all jumbles together. It's week 15, baby. Sure. Who the heck knows? But the fact that he is having an MRI, we won't know till Wednesday. He's probably not going to practice. And again, Yates, against Dallas, even if Mostert played, Wilson was probably in the flex conversation, right? As a running back against Dallas, you would be in the flex conversation against Dallas as a running back. So it is the two of them. I mean, Shanahan has at least come out and basically said, it's Wilson and Mostert. We're not getting involved. Tevin Coleman, McKinnon is basically playing special teams, and that's it. So even with Mostert, Wilson was a guy who I think you could get away with as a flex. If Mostert is out, he's got to have the vast majority of the work, and that's just a huge position for Dallas. So for me, he comes in as my first ranked running back and my number 2 on my list.
Yeah, I know that we've got to make this decision now. And I put in our chat earlier today. I was like, I keep expecting that there's a game tonight. Like it's still in my mind that week 14 is still ongoing. I'm waiting for Wednesday afternoon football again. But no, so you got to make this decision now, as you said, or tonight, as you set in your waiver claims. But yeah, I think Jeff Wilson absolutely would still be in the pick him up consideration if Raheem Mostert is healthy. If Raheem Mostert misses this game, then he's absolutely someone that you plug in. The Dallas Cowboys defense is allowing 5.1 yards per rush attempt on the season. They are allowing 1.3 rushing touchdowns per game, which is bottom 6 in the NFL. Like, you've got to start your opposing running backs against Dallas. So outside of Giovanni Bernard. So yeah, I think with Jeff Wilson, yeah, he's absolutely someone that, again, kind of put these guys, they're all in my top 5. It goes Dobbins. Geez, it goes Edwards,
Snell.
Thank you. And then Wilson as my 1, 2, 3 running back pickups. So yeah, put him in whatever order you want. They all absolutely deserve to be picked up if you're in need of a running back. It just depends. I know, as far as my ranking of them, I know that Edwards has a role for sure.
Yeah. And by the way, pick them all up because don't let them be used against you either this week or next week. I mean, as much as you're looking to beef up your own team, make sure that your opponents are not able to beef up their teams as well. So I like it. We're basically in agreement again with the running backs. All three of these guys make priority pickups. So who's next on your list then in your priority?
As far as overall?
Yeah, whatever you want to do.
But overall. So I've got my overall is Gus Edwards, Benny Snell. And then I've got James Washington at 3. And
okay,
then Jeff
hold
Wilson.
on. We're going to thank you a little bit for James Washington, and we're going to get into it because on the podcast yesterday, and hopefully everybody listening listens to our podcast, I was like, how about James Washington, guys? Like Tags went through his list of receivers. Sig went through his list of receivers. No mention of James Washington. I was like, James Washington's pretty much, I think he was my number 2. He's now, he's still my number 2, but he was my number 2, but they didn't even mention him. And I basically spent 3 minutes making the case for James Washington. Talk about him for a second. Washington's a guy who do you think that you feel like you might be able to start this week against Cincinnati?
I think you can, at least in the flex consideration, right? And when we go through the list of these other names, like Tyron Johnson, Russell Gage, Laviska Shenault, Gabriel Davis, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, like they're all flex plays for me, right? So literally I pick up any of them. I really don't care, like that's kind of where we're at with these guys. Like I think you made the joke, like it's a 35-way tie for waiting for one waiver wire pickup this week. But so with James Washington though, what Pittsburgh is looking for right now is just reliability at the receiver position. They need someone who can catch the ball, and that's just not happening with Deontay Johnson. Chase Claypool, for some reason, I don't know what the heck he did, but he is being punished, I guess. And James Washington's playing above him as far as snaps and routes run. So I think you've got to look at James Washington now as the wide receiver 3 here in Pittsburgh. Arguably, maybe even the wide receiver 2 if he does take over Deontay Johnson. As far as the coaching staff finally saying, like, we've had enough, Deontay. You're a talented route runner. You can get open at will, but you can't reel in the football. Right. And that's what they need. So especially too when you factor in the matchup here against Cincinnati, it's enough for me to say James Washington is at the top. They're probably going to be my highest ranked flex option this week out of these other receivers. And that's enough to put number 1.
Yeah. I mean, he's up there. He's up there for me. It's something where it's really close. And I'll talk about the other 3 that he's really close with. Again, more snaps. And what you saw is that he was out there all the time when Deontay Johnson was benched in the first half of that Buffalo game after the drops. And in the second half, I believe he saw 17 snaps. Chase Claypool saw 4. That makes no sense to me, especially because they are desperate for someone to catch the ball. Chase Claypool does not have the dropsies. Okay. No. Deontay Johnson has the dropsies. Juju occasionally has the dropsies. Chase Claypool, no dropsies. Okay. Ever. So why he gets the bench in front of James Washington? And I get wanting to give Washington more snaps. You heard about them talking on the broadcast. I mentioned this also on the podcast in that game, I think against the Ravens, where, Ben kind of threw it up at this lollipop and Washington came down, and it was all like, when I need a big catch, I wanted to go to James Washington because I am confident in him making that reception. Okay, that's fine, but not at the expense of Chase Claypool. But whatever it is, he is out there. Let me ask you about Tyron Johnson, though, because he's a guy who's moved up my waiver wire rankings because of the fact that I think we can assume it's a Thursday game here. So we can assume Mike Williams is not going to play after leaving with a back injury. And Keenan Allen got banged up at the end of that game. I think it was a hamstring injury. He was estimated as did not practice on Monday. Now, that doesn't mean anything. Austin Eckler was also estimated as did not practice on Monday. But if Keenan Allen is out, and maybe even if he's not, if Mike Williams is out, talk about Tyron Johnson for a second. Is he somebody, if Keenan Allen's out, let's start there. Would you feel comfortable firing him up against Las Vegas?
I've got him as my number 2 wide receiver. So yeah, I think you can look his way. Again, it's nothing more than a flex play. This is something that if you're absolutely desperate, you need that like spark plug for your lineup. You've been relying on someone like Allen Lazard and it hasn't come through for your flex, right? And you want that potential, right? Then I think Tyron Johnson is someone that you can look at because of his opportunity in this offense. I watched this game. He looked pretty good. Yeah. And the matchup here against Las Vegas, where yes, you could easily see Austin Eckler have like a just fantastic game here, but yet at the same time, you still need to throw the ball. And based on the way the Chargers defenses looked recently and the Chargers as a whole, I think that you could easily make the case that this game could turn into a shootout. So I think Tyron Johnson, he's a fine spark plug for your lineup. I don't know if I would be relying on him as anything more than that, but absolutely, he deserves to be considered.
How about Chad Hansen? Because I know that Brandon Cooks was out, so it was like, ooh, look at this. But really, Hansen was kind of taking over the Will Fuller role in this offense. He was out there the game before against Indianapolis, and he had a good game. He's got 14 targets over the last 2 games. Sounds like Brandon Cooks is going to be back in this game, so that might be something that, alters how you feel about it. But for me, seems like Hansen, and again, against the same team that he just put up a big effort against 2 games ago, seems like he might be a guy who, if you're looking for kind of a decent floor, maybe not the huge ceiling game, but somebody with a decent floor. What do you think about Chad Hansen as a pickup?
Yeah, as the decent floor play, then I think you can go after Hansen. If you're betting on him doing anything more than that, I really don't think that's where you want to rely, at least in a waiver claim. So yeah, I think Chad Hansen, absolutely. I mean, he's performed. He's stepped in here the past 2 weeks and has performed really well. He's bringing a safe floor week in and week out. And so yeah, if you need that safe floor play, I absolutely think you can go with Chad Hansen. But yet at the same time, I probably would be looking elsewhere. He's at 7 for me.
Okay. And finally, what about Russell Gage? Somebody that you mentioned. Again, we don't know about Julio at this point. It kind of feels like it was a little bit of a surprise that he was inactive in this last game. It feels like they probably want to play it safe with him, I guess, going forward. If Julio does not play this week, Russell Gage, he was fine, 7 targets, 5 catches, and he threw a touchdown pass, which is nice. You can't rely on that. But Russell Gage against Tampa Bay, how do you feel about him as a potential pickup?
I definitely have him in consideration. He's at 3 for me. So yeah,
Okay.
I absolutely think that you can look at Russell Gage. I really don't want to be relying on him as anything more than that low end flex play. He's a little bit further down in my rankings, but yeah, at the same time, they need someone to catch the ball. It's not happening with Hayden Hurst here recently. Calvin Ridley is about as sure of a thing as you can find in all of fantasy football. But yet at the same time, the ball has to go somewhere else because it's not going to the running backs. So yeah, Gage, I think I'm looking up his corner matchup. I can't remember who the slot receiver is in Tampa Bay right now. I want to say Sean Murphy Bunting, but I don't think that's it. So yeah, I think I know it's a good matchup though, as far as that slot corner. So anyway, I think he can be considered, but yet again, as a low end flex play, in my opinion.
Cool. Hold on. We got a guest here, as always, during the live stream. We've got Shirtless Son. Thank you guys, by the way, for liking. If you were here on Sunday, I had something where I said if I got 100 likes in the next 10 minutes, my son got to keep his shirt off the whole day. It worked. He really likes it. He's very excited. Okay. Thanks for saying hi. That's it. Just a quick hi. Okay. I've got to do this. I love you too. Love you too, bud. All right. Sorry. That's my son, Will. Everybody, as usual, like the stream right now. If I get producer, mark the likes that we've got at this moment. If he gets 50 more likes, I will let him keep his shirt off for the rest of the day as well, which he really loves to do. Thank you. And like the stream anyway, just for fun. A lot of people are asking about the Ronald Jones surgery. We are going to get there in 3 minutes. Like the video, keep streaming in. We're going to talk about all of that. I do want to bring up one final name at the very least. Yates, which you haven't mentioned yet, and he is my number 3 pickup on the week, actually. Again, the top 5 are all kind of right there. It's Lynn Bowden. I mean, we've got, whether you want to classify him as a running back or a wide receiver, in a lot of my leagues, it's both. It's either or, which is nice, by the way, depending on where your weakness lies. He's a guy who, again, Mike Gesicki, I don't know if he's been declared out, but he's out. Jakeem Grant, I don't know if he's technically been declared out, but he's out.
Week to week.
He's out. Devontae Parker is probably going to try to play through, right?
I don't think so. I think he might be out for this one.
Okay. So, who's getting the ball? The running back situation, if you know the running back situation, I don't know what's happening right now. It's a matchup against New England. If it's only Lynn Bowden, then Belichick's going to be like, all right, I will take away Lynn Bowden and figure out the rest. But I mean, yeah, it's given 9 targets, 7 catches, 82 yards, I believe. He can also, he's versatile. They'll have some plays dialed up where he's going to play quarterback because he played quarterback a little bit, right? In high school and a little bit in college. So he's going to be able to be in there. Where's he, Yates? Where's he in your rankings?
He's a little bit further down, but it's because of one, I hadn't considered all the wide receiver or the receiver injuries. So yeah, he could come up, but it was just, I don't have clarity on what the running back situation looks like, right? I had no information to go off of as far as, okay, do we see Myles Gaskin back for this week? Do we see Savon Ahmed back for this week? Do we have, Matt Breida, what does the running back depth chart look like? Because if all 3 of those guys come back, not factoring in the receiver injuries, Bowden could easily go back to being inactive. So it's just kind of like, okay, do I really want in week 15 to put my chances of moving on to the next round of the fantasy football playoffs in Lynn Bowden's hand after him not playing much of the season, right? So, but yeah, you make a good point. Like if literally you have Mac Hollins, Adam Shaheen, Durham Smythe out there, like those are your receiving options. Like you need someone else. So I would
move them up your rankings, move them up your waiver wire
rankings.
rankings.
Here's the thing. I don't think, again, we're in week 15. You only have a few number, like depending on your playoff structure, right? Like there 4 teams are playing still, correct, right? So like the amount of people that are going to be looking at the waiver wire and saying, hey, all 4 teams are not going to be going, I need to pick up Lynn Bowden. So it could be something where you put in a waiver claim on some of these other guys, the guys who have a little bit more certainty. And then as we move throughout the week and you get a little bit more information here to find out, okay, Devontae Parker's ruled out, Jakeem Grant's ruled out. We know that Myles Gaskin's out or whatever. Then at that point, it becomes a little bit more clear where you can then pick up Lynn Bowden because again, I think he's just going to sit on waivers.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like I've done that before. I've been like, I don't need to waste the claim on this guy, or I'll get him at some point. And then they go. If he is wide receiver eligible, and I'm in leagues where I started Devontae Parker last week. I was lucky enough to move on, but I'm really receiver desperate. Lynn Bowden might be the guy who I need to go if he's wide receiver eligible. So he is a guy who I've been looking at a little bit and is kind of right in that range of the Snell, Edwards, Jeff Wilson, depending on what you need, because I do think that he's going to offer a pretty high floor with all the targets. Last one, Yates. Who's your best tight end of the week?
I have Irv Smith.
Yep.
Okay. But that is dependent upon Kyle Rudolph being out this week.
Yeah, I agree. But if he's out, I mean, against your Bears, that they struggle to contain tight ends here. He would probably be a startable option this week, even in your fantasy playoffs, right?
Yeah, he'd be in the streaming conversation. Right. Again, like we talk about it all the time, where you have tight ends 5 to 18 are your streaming tight ends, and whichever one comes away with scoring a touchdown is going to finish at number 5. If they don't score a touchdown, they're going to finish at 18, right? So it's kind of in that range where, if he finds the end zone again, then absolutely he can return that value for you. But I think you may have better options. But as far as like this waiver wire, and if you are absolutely desperate, you had Mike Gesicki. He looks like he's out for this game after he looked in a lot of pain.
Yeah, he's
you most likely then need a replacement. For me, it's between Irv Smith and Cole Kmet.
Yeah, and Tags mentioned Cole Kmet. Again, he has he's getting targets at this point. But again, both these guys, I guess, are going to be in that conversation of, I might start them this week depending on what the landscape is, but they're going to probably rank outside the top 12, right?
Yes, completely.
Perfect. All right, we've got a ton of questions here, and thank you. Keep the questions coming. No problem. Again, like the stream. Really helps us out. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe below. But let's get to the question that's kind of on everybody's mind, which is Ronald Jones. That question has popped up a million times so far in our feed. So Ronald Jones apparently suffered a fractured pinky finger. Is that what it is? Yeah, it's pinky finger.
Yeah, it came out may have fractured a pinky finger, and then turned out that he had surgery.
Right. So he had surgery, had a pin in it. So sounds very similar to what Chris Godwin had. And Chris Godwin was originally estimated to miss 4 to 6 weeks. He wound up missing 1 week, and he's played well regardless of his fantasy production. You haven't really seen he had that big giant brace. So people are asking, if he's out, what do I do? Do you pick up LaShawn McCoy? Do we think Leonard Fournette gets in? I think the big thing here is, Yates, you correct me if I'm wrong, been a busy morning. We don't actually know if Ronald Jones is out for this game. Is that right?
That's correct. So there is still the possibility that he does play in this game. And you could see like a brace on his finger or like a glove, right? Like, but it's much more difficult for the running back, especially handling those handoffs and things like that. So it's a concern. It's something to monitor throughout the week. I really don't think that there's much actionable advice to give as of right now, because we talked about this. Leonard Fournette, 78% rostered in Yahoo leagues, I think is what we checked. So like he's above the threshold. If he's available in your league, like go get him. I really doubt that he is though. But I think Leonard Fournette is going to be the guy that I would really look at. Otherwise, I'm not looking at LaShawn McCoy. I don't think Keyshawn Vaughn is going to be someone that you can trust if Ronald Jones is out this week. It's pretty much just Leonard Fournette or bust at this point.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that it's not the greatest matchup against Atlanta. Like you can pass all over Atlanta, but they're pretty decent against the run. Really, though, I'm going to put it out there, Yates. I don't think he's missing this game for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think the fractured pinky finger not nearly as important for a running back as it is a wide receiver. You and Tags and I were talking about that a little bit, right? It's pretty different to catch a fastball from Tom Brady than it is to take a handoff or catch a lollipop, right? That's going out there. And second, look, man, if you're Ronald Jones, like every day, Yates, I come to work, right? And I'm like, Yates trying to be a better analyst than I am. Every day I'm looking at it and I'm like, here he comes. Here comes Yates. So I can't stop Yates. You wonder why I don't sleep at all? It's because I'm trying to make sure you're not like completely overtaking me in the analyst rankings. Ronald Jones has finally got this job, right? Happened where he actually fumbled like third play of the game or whatever that was, didn't get benched, held on to it, and ran and had a great game. If you finally got this job, finally, after all this time, you're not giving it up. I think he's going to do what he can to play. So I do expect Ronald Jones to play. So if you roster Ronald Jones, I'd be fine. But I'm in complete agreement with you. If it's, I would expect that Fournette is, despite the fact that he was a healthy and active, would get the majority of the work. And if not, I'm not trusting LaShawn McCoy at this point in my fantasy championship, right? That's where we're at?
Absolutely no way.
Okay, great. Let's get to some questions. You ready to go?
Yep.
Pete Kirby asks, where is Jalen Hurts for real? So I think we pretty much come down on that. I think absolutely for real in the short term. I'm not talking about his dynasty value, his long-term future. I'm thinking right now, and especially this week, I think he's a guy who you can deploy. Yates is a little less optimistic on him. He thinks he's more of a maybe streamer in a sort of more like a 2 QB league, super flex league, but not in the QB1 conversation. Is that fair, Yates?
Absolutely.
Wonderful. From T Squire, I have Taysom Hill. I was wondering who I should pick up in case of a Drew Brees return. Derek Carr, Phillip Rivers, or Jalen Hurts. Yates, I'm going to give you their full schedules right now for the next 2 weeks. I don't know if he's talking about just this week or full. The Derek Carr gets the Chargers and the Dolphins. Phillip Rivers gets Houston and then Pittsburgh. And Jalen Hurts gets Arizona and then Dallas. Who do you think you would prefer rest of season among those guys?
Let me answer it in two different ways. So As far as this week, I would probably go with Phillip Rivers. Even though he could easily take a backseat to the run game like he did this week, I think that he's going to just provide you a safe enough floor. Rest of season, I'm fine rolling out Jalen Hurts as a low-end streaming option this week, hoping that I get to week 16, and then that way I can play Jalen Hurts against Dallas. I don't really want to do Phillip Rivers up against Pittsburgh, and Derek Carr, you said Los Angeles, and then Miami.
Yes.
Miami, who is forced a turnover in 19 straight games, 20 straight games. Can't remember off the top of my head. Just forced Patrick Mahomes into three interceptions. I don't want to mess with that. So, yeah, I think if I'm playing just a week to week and I'll figure it out next week, then I'm going with Rivers there. If I'm going rest of season, I'll go Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I really don't have a huge problem with that. I'd probably just go Hurts. But again, this is me just buying into what I saw, feeling a little more confident in him. And again, I think he's just going to offer such a high floor because I think his minimum is going to be 50, 60 yards rushing. And that's basically like, hey, here's a touchdown pass for you right off the bat, going in. So for me, especially with the matchup against Dallas next, I think he can exploit Arizona. I would probably just go with him, but I think they are all fine options. And I think playing it the way Yates said is perfectly acceptable. From Nicholas Soto, is Myles Gaskin droppable with only 2 weeks left?
No, I wouldn't. It all depends on for who and how desperate you are. So if you are like, I don't have a running back, is Myles Gaskin coming back this week? That I can't answer right now. So if that's the case, then I'm sure you drop him for someone who you know is going to be playing this next week. But as far as if I, just in a vacuum, should you drop Myles Gaskin? No, I don't think so. Because what happens if he comes back and the guy who, you play in week 16 picks him up and plays him up against you? That would just be the worst feeling in the world.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I agree. This is tough. Do we know for sure Gaskin's out this week? I mean, I know when he tested positive, it hasn't been the 10 days, but there's all the weirdness about 5 days. We don't actually know with 100% certainty that he's out this week, right?
No, not to my knowledge, which is why with all this COVID stuff, and the things keep changing based on CDC recommendations. So it's just like, I'm just waiting until I get the official word. Then I will make my recommendations and stuff like that. But this is all just so hard to keep track of.
Yeah. Okay. So we are getting still a ton of questions, even now, even after we talked about it, a little bit about Lynn Bowden. Let's just talk a little bit more. And some of them are specific. And again, Yates, I'm not going to hold you to it. And nobody's going to hold me to it, of course, because we have not done our official week 15 rankings yet. But people are asking, Curtis Bruce asked, is Lynn Bowden Jr. worth a start as either a wide receiver or running back? And Rodrigo says, hi, guys, I need a running back too. Harris, Edmonds, Bowden, Moss, or Murray. For me, and this is where I'm going to be, again, I'm not going to hold you to it, Yates. For me, Bowden is probably going to be ranked ahead of Damian Harris and Edmonds and Moss and Murray as someone who in the end you can probably start as a flex. Now, again, I'm not going to hold you to it. And for you, it may depend on who's out. I'm assuming everybody's out. Everybody's out of this game pretty much for the Dolphins. So for me, he is a guy who I think you can start this week. And I would probably start him over those options. Just ballparking it, Yates. What do you think about those guys?
As of right now, I think you might be right. New England up against Miami, Buffalo up against Denver. Yeah, I think based on his workload, if we can comfortably rely on that, again, it's a gamble. All these guys are gambles, right? None of them are sure things. But if you want to lean on the receiving workload there for Lynn Bowden, I think that you can comfortably do that.
Yeah,
over those guys.
I want to remind everybody that Yates, you do a rankings article and you tweet it out, right? Your rankings article. Yes, so do I. So if we don't answer a question for a start, sit on the live stream. I know that's what most people care about at this point. Check our Twitter profile. I'm at Dan Harris 80. Yates is at Kyle Y NFL. Just check it out. We'll have them up there by Wednesday or Thursday. They'll be up there. You'll know exactly who to start. All that good stuff. So don't worry about that. From Jacob Witherspoon, is T.Y. Hilton a good pickup this week? And would you feel like starting him over Terry McLaurin?
First part of your question, yes, he is a good pickup. 4 touchdowns in the last 3 games.
Yep.
Over Terry McLaurin, no. I'm not going that far yet.
What if it's Dwayne Haskins at quarterback?
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
By the way, there is optimism on Smith. There is optimism on Smith that he's going to play. But what if it is Dwayne Haskins? They get Seattle this week.
McLaurin's proven that he's fine no matter the quarterback. And it's up against Seattle. Now, Seattle has actually tightened things up here recently. They're not as easy of a matchup as they have been. So I don't think we can go in and say McLaurin's a top 12 receiver. But yet I'm not going so far as to say that T.Y. Hilton's a top 20 receiver yet. So, yeah, I think I'll have McLaurin just a few spots above T.Y. Hilton. But I do think that he's worth picking up. It would just be a matter of, I don't think I would go so far as to say he's over McLaurin.
T.Y. Hilton is worth picking up. I have waited so long to hear Yates say it. All right, let's get to Brandon H. Again, rankings, Yates, very preliminary. Do you think that you would prefer Ben Roethlisberger against Cincinnati or Tom Brady against Atlanta? That's from Brandon H. this week.
Probably Ben Roethlisberger.
I think I'll have Brady ranked higher, but my guess is these are like right back to back. Like that's basically where we're in at the same spot. I think both of them have very favorable matchups. They're both going to be ranked right there. I'm just I don't know about this Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is making me a little nervous right now. And it strikes me.
So is Tom Brady.
Yeah. Well, Brady, to be as fair as possible, you're right. Brady made a bunch of bad throws, but I think he could have had a much bigger game if he had to. They didn't have the ball at all. I think he could have, but It's fair. It's a fair point, but I don't think they're going to really be able to run on Atlanta quite as well, especially if Ronald Jones is even limited, regardless of if he's in the game. Well, I do think that Pittsburgh is going to be able to run the ball in Cincinnati. But again, my guess is they're going to be very close next to each other. From Jean-Christophe Bertrand, would you prefer to start Gallman or Connor in standard league? I think we can both say Connor is probably going to be out this week, is my guess. The Giants, though, are playing the Browns this week. And you do know that Connor, of course, is playing Cincinnati. If Connor is a go in this game, do you think you'd rather play him against Cincinnati or Gallman?
It's so hard. It's so hard to say that right now. This is more of a question for like the start at live stream on Thursday when we have a little bit more information to go off of with the practice reports and all that. I'll have a little bit more clarity on Connor and his availability.
Yep. And again, I get it, guys. Most of you are asking start sit questions. we'll do whatever we can. I think if I'm just going to give you a little bit, I would probably just do Gallman, because I don't think that even if Connor plays, it's going to be a full workload type of game. So that's where I lean right now. Again, check our rankings as we get into it. From Benjamin A, I have Stafford and Alex Smith is my backup. Should I try to pick up and lock up Minshew or hope for the best with Alex Smith?
I'm not playing Minshew up against Baltimore this next week, even though we saw Baker Mayfield just put up 42 points on them.
Right.
I'm not playing Minshew his first week back. If that is really, if Minshew's your only available option, I mean, Alex Smith, and then you said Matthew Stafford, because Stafford's dealing with his own rib injury.
He's not going to play,
might not.
man. Stafford's not going to play.
So. I don't think he's playing. So, yeah, I mean, pick him up as insurance. You have to have someone, so it all depends on the other options that are available on your waiver wire. But yet, at the same time, if you have to pick up someone, Minshew's probably not going to be higher than like QB 20 in my rankings, though. Alex Smith maybe at like QB 19 or 18 against Seattle.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I think that's right, but that's the point. Like, you may have two quarterbacks who don't play this week, and it's not as if Alex Smith is going to be such a better start against Seattle than Minshew would be against Baltimore. So yeah, I would just pick up Minshew, and it's a tough situation. Kudos to you for still playing in week 15. From Darren Murray, what do you think, just generally speaking, about KJ Hamler and Kendrick Bourne? You've got Bourne going up against Dallas, and you've got KJ Hamler going up against, I believe, Buffalo this week.
Buffalo, yeah. KJ Hamler, I mean, as far as like a long-term perspective, I'm really excited for him. He was ranked very highly in my draft grades coming out of the 2020 draft class. So I'm excited for him. You can't rely on him, though. 2 receptions, 2 touchdowns this past week. Yes, he can be a dart throw, that could absolutely hit, but yet at the same time, I don't want to rely on that, especially week 15. Kendrick Bourne is an interesting option, but yeah, I don't want to buy into Nick Mullins. Deebo Samuel.
By the way, it may not even be Nick Mullins. I don't know if you've heard this one, but there's like rumors that they may bench Mullins this week. Just so
they should.
Yeah, he's not playing well.
Yeah, so then CJ Beathard.
Yep.
Gross.
Again, that's far from a final. That's just kind of whispers out there that they can do it.
Yeah, no, that's not good. So I think Kendrick Bourne would probably be the one just because of the matchup. But yeah, and Deebo Samuel most likely being out. I haven't heard anything else on that.
Deebo's done for the year, man. Like basically they've all but confirmed that. So yeah. I agree with you. I would go with Bourne. And I do think that Bourne without Deebo Samuel in the lineup has been decent, when he's gotten one of those guys at least out of the lineup, he's been decent. He's seeing the targets, and I think that he'll do so again in what it amounts to a favorable matchup. So I think Bourne is kind of a sneaky play a little bit this week. Again, he comes with a very low ceiling, but I do think he's going to be kind of a floor play this week if you absolutely have to. But again, not somebody who I'm getting overly excited about. Let's go to Travis Elkins asks, would you prefer the Seattle defense or the Miami defense if you could only have one for the rest of the season? Seattle gets Washington this week. And again, we don't know if that's Dwayne Haskins or Alex Smith, which probably makes a difference. And then the Rams, while Miami gets the Patriots this weekend and then Las Vegas next weekend. So if you had to only have one of those rest of the year, who would it be?
I'm going Miami based on the way they're playing this season. And forcing turnovers, I'll continue to buy into that.
Yeah, that's the right call for me as well. It's just, Seattle has been playing better defensively, and if they get Dwayne Haskins this week, maybe. And again, the Rams, you never know if Goff gets pressure, he might turn into a turtle. But yeah, Miami is playing really, really well. Mahomes with, the 3 picks, just mind-boggling, really. And with that said, like, how do you feel about the Dolphins this week? Because that's also a question that we got from Rodrigo. Do you like them as a start this week? Do you think against the Pats? I mean, the Pats are, they give up a ton of points to the Rams. Won, people their quarterfinal matchup by themselves. The Rams put up whatever it was, 21 points. How do you feel about Miami against New England this week?
Miami against New England, as far as the offense?
The defense, yeah.
Yeah, up against Cam Newton, that doesn't scare me. I mean, Cam Newton could find the end zone a couple times as a runner, but that still doesn't matter when you can force turnovers the way that Miami can. So, yeah, I don't think they're going to be a top 5 option for me, but yet they'll probably be in my top 12.
Yeah, From John Ryan, if Christian McCaffrey comes back this week, and again, let's assume he has limited practices all week, okay? But then he's active, because if he gets into full practice and he's totally good to go and there are no question marks, of course you're rolling with him without question. But let's say he's gotten in limited practice, he wants to give it a go. He's starting him against Green Bay. From John Ryan.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's the correct answer. If CMC plays, you are starting him, no questions asked. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if he's going to be, if he's supposedly limited. Like, the potential is otherworldly, especially, by the way, in a favorable matchup against Green Bay. That's also a Saturday game, I believe, right? Let's have some fun on Saturday. Let's do all tiebreakers that you want to do in players you want to start. Make it Saturday. Have an extra day to have some fun. From Mr. Yang, are any Eagles wide receivers in consideration for a pickup this week? You're just shaking your head?
I'm just shaking my head. I was waiting for you to comment.
Legitimately
I was getting dizzy. I was getting dizzy there.
Like, we've lost Yates. We've lost Yates. So that's a no. All right, not even Jalen Reagor. I mean, no. I'm just trying to make it fun. No, okay, fine. That's fun. From Christopher, let's call him Salmons on. I have Mike Davis and Gallman is on waivers. Would you drop Mike Davis now to pick up Wayne Gallman, or would you hold to wait to see what happens?
I know the last that I had heard about Christian McCaffrey was that he plans to return in 2020. I don't know if that meant week 15. I don't know if that meant week 17. Yeah. There's no clarity there. Mike Davis, if he starts this week, I think is a valuable fantasy asset. Wayne Gallman is a sure thing. You know that he's going to be starting. You know that he's going to get those points for you, and that he could be, someone that you can plug in next week too if you do advance. So I think it all depends on if you have to make this call right now. Oh, but Mike Davis goes up against Green Bay.
I'm holding Mike Davis. I'm just going to jump in. Well, yeah, I'll give
Mike
mine.
Davis.
Are you? I'm not telling you that's what you need to do. I'm just saying that that's what I would do, because the potential for Mike Davis, who again had a big game in this past one, is just much higher than Wayne Gallman, who, whether or not he's actually being subbed out at the goal line or whether it's just sort of the circumstances that have gotten there, I'm going with Mike Davis against Green Bay. I'm holding him for the potential. And again, my guess is, if Wayne Gallman is out there on waivers, like, this is probably a league where you can find somebody, right? I mean, that's the thing. You've got, right, all the guys we've talking about 3 or 4 running backs who are available right now on waivers, who are people who you could pick up. So that is something that I would probably just hold until we know. From Curtis Bruce, are you worried at all about Russell Wilson in this tough matchup against Washington this week?
Yeah, I'm absolutely worried. Russell Wilson, I mean, you look at his fantasy finishes here over the past several weeks. I'm pulling it up. Going back to week 9, QB 10, QB 19, QB 12, QB 19, QB 21, QB 8 up against the Jets. So if you, and again, like 4 touchdowns, but still finishes the QB 8 last week because of only 206 passing yards, and they were up big. You just were able to turn it to the ground game. So I think with Washington, you could see him start to like jump back more towards that like 40 pass attempts, but yet Washington's not an easy matchup. And this offense has not looked great here recently. So outside of playing the Jets, I am a little bit concerned here with Russell Wilson. I moved him down even last week. I had Wilson at 5 in my quarterback rankings. And so ECR had him at 1. Yeah. So I think he'll probably be low end QB1 again for me this week up against Washington.
Yeah. I mean, I've generally kind of, and Yates, we talk about my philosophy generally. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I let the matchups factor in certainly, but less, I think, probably than most analysts do. It's just sort of the way I do it. And I try to do, what decision would I make? And as a fantasy player, I have a very difficult time benching, a locked in stud for a streamer. Like, I just do it. That's just the way I do. So I try to rank the way I would make my own decisions. So I'll have him ranked as a starter. Would I be expecting a monstrous game against Washington? No, I wouldn't. But it is something where I'm going to have him ranked, as a solid starter this week. From Jeff Pereira, let's say both Dobbins and Wilson are available on waivers. Who would you prefer?
Dobbins or Jeff Wilson?
Jeff Wilson, yes.
Dobbins.
Dobbins is what, you said top 12 for you, probably.
He'll be a top 10 back for me this week, probably.
What do you think Wilson will be if Mostert is out this week against Dallas?
Gut feeling 16, 15.
Okay. So not a huge difference between the two necessarily if we knew Mostert was going to be out right now, right? Like not a giant difference, at least this week, right?
Right.
Okay. So let's go to, I don't know how to pronounce all the names, but Tacky T, let's go with, would you prefer, if you had one defense, the Titans defense, who gets Detroit this week? Good matchup, of course, because it probably is going to be against quarterback, but Green Bay next week. Or starting Indianapolis, who has Houston this week, also a pretty favorable matchup, but Pittsburgh next week. So if you had to start Tennessee against Detroit and Green Bay, or Indianapolis against Houston and Pittsburgh.
I'm going to play it 1 week at a time, Dan. And so that's why I'm going to go with Tennessee up against Chase Daniel. Without Kenny Golladay, we just don't know what the heck this offense is going to look like with Chase Daniel. There's always the risk that Matthew Stafford toughs it out. We can both sit here and say, like, yeah, we think he's not playing. And the percentage chances probably indicate that too. But yet at the same time, like, there is always the possibility that he comes back and plays. And if that's the case, I'm not going anywhere near Tennessee. But yet I think that I want to play 1 week at a time. Like, I just want to advance. And that means that I've got to play the one with the more favorable matchup. So I'll go with Tennessee there.
All right, someone's looking ahead. I don't know whether or not he is or she is guaranteed to be into playing in week 16, if they're just trying to get ahead of the ball game right now and look at week 16. But Tyler Knowles asked, do you like picking up T. Higgins over Chase Claypool as a plug and play flex for week 16? So Cincinnati is going to get Houston in week 16. That's quite the favorable matchup. And Chase Claypool and the Steelers are going to get Indianapolis. I will say one thing. We don't know who the quarterback is going to be for Cincinnati, right? And we don't know what Chase Claypool's status really is going to be at this point, because if he continues to see 35, 40% of the snaps, might be different. But right now, you've got to make that choice, Yates. What do you think? Higgins versus Claypool?
Yeah, again, all of this is just gut reactions because I haven't done any of my rankings even for this week. So all of it is gut reactions. So yeah, T. Higgins is probably going to be the one that I'll roll with there in that Houston matchup over Chase Claypool, and just knowing what I know right now with him playing behind James Washington.
Okay, can't pronounce the name, but asks, is there any reason to continue to roster either of the Bills running backs?
Not if you can help it. I don't foresee a chance or a situation where I'm going to be playing either one of them. So at this point, yeah, just drop them. I mean, Zach Moss going from it was very difficult to do projections. Obviously, I do my weekly fantasy projections article, and it was very difficult to do this backfield last week because I was like, well, Zach Moss got 3 carries last week after he fumbled, but he could easily come out and lead this backfield in touches again this week, and that's what happened. So, I mean, yeah, both these guys just cancel each other out. You really shouldn't be looking at them for fantasy purposes.
Yep. At this point, especially, you can definitely drop because there's very little likelihood that either one of them is going to be decent enough to start next week, regardless of what happens. Again, I can't read the name, but is Baker Mayfield a viable streaming option for the next 2 weeks? Again, he gets the Giants and the Jets, huge game against Baltimore last night.
Yeah, I think he's going to be in the streaming conversation. He'll probably be right around that Jalen Hurts area for me, down around like QB 18, QB 17, just based on the performance here. I don't know if I want to rely on that, especially in week 15, but yet week 16, yeah, Baker Mayfield's going to be in my top 10 quarterbacks. You better believe it.
All right. So I will, somebody is asking, who is it? Carson Lowe is basically asking about Montgomery versus Connor. But since we don't really know about Connor, I'll sort of change that into, how much do you trust David Montgomery now after 2 huge performances, really, in great matchups? You get Minnesota now and then Jacksonville. So is he just, because I don't know where you had him ranked last week, Yates. He was, I don't know, within my top 7 at the very, right? Here. So is he like a top 10 back for you at this point going forward?
Maybe even top 5, based on the matchups. Okay. I think you got to put him in that, at least in that territory.
Okay. I'm so sorry, guys. I think my eyesight is either going or I can't really pronounce it. From somebody. Do you trust Melvin Gordon this week against Buffalo?
Yeah, I think you can. I wrote up this game earlier and saying that Buffalo is allowing, I think it's something like 4.6 yards per carry on the season. And let me find it. 4.6 yards per rush attempt this season and 1.2 rushing touchdowns per game. So looking at Melvin Gordon, yes, he's continuing to split work with Phillip Lindsay for some reason, even though Phillip Lindsay is not getting the job done. Melvin Gordon's actually been looking pretty good here recently. So I think, yeah, and he's involved in the receiving game too. I don't know if he's going to bring a huge upside based on the fact that he hasn't found the end zone here recently, but yet same time, you got to plug him in as a mid-range RB2, and you're just hoping that he does find the end zone.
All right. From Carl, are you at all concerned about Chris Carson against Washington, given the fact that Carlos Hyde got so many carries in this most recent game against the Jets?
I'm not, because you look at that game script, and that was the reason why Carlos Hyde got so much work, in my opinion. I think that you just saw Seattle was like, why would we give Chris Carson this much work? So yeah, I have no concerns. I think that Chris Carson's in the low end running back one conversation each and every week.
I completely agree. Okay, that's going to do it for week 15 waiver wire live stream. Great job, Yates. As always, remember, check out our Twitter profiles, Dan Harris 80, Kyle Y NFL. We will have our rankings posted there. You can check them out anytime. Yates will be doing a start sit live stream on Thursday. He will also be doing one on Sunday morning, as well tags. We will then continue to podcast as always, and Yates and I'll be back next week to hopefully bring you your fantasy football championship. I'll talk to you then.